Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah. So Imam Marc here with a quick overview and somewhat review of session 5 for our new Arabic class, the Arabic Reader. So in session 5 today, we had a couple of new documents introduced to us. One is the one-page document here that has all of the siyag, or the voicings for the verb. And then also we have our document here with the al-mufradat at the top. And this one is going to have not only our vocab as it relates to the Risala of Ibn Abi Zayd al-Qayrawani, but it also has our sample and example sentences using 10 verbs and 10 nouns from the Risala, but refashioned or repurposed into new sample sentences. And then we'll have a couple of extra paragraphs that we'll read that will help us to better understand what these nouns and verbs mean and how they're used in context, so that we can not only, inshallah, read the Risala, but other things as well. So that's what that document is. You'll see in the second section of it, it says al-Qā'imatu athaniya li ashrati af'alin and asma'in. So it's the list, the second list of 10 verbs and the second list of 10 nouns. So we'll get to that one in just a second, but I wanted to go over briefly what's the purpose of the first one-page document. So if we look here, it says what wazn fa'ala ala sighati fa'ala. We have a wazn, or a morphological form, that is these three letters, fa, ayn, and lam. But how do you vocalize them or vowelize them? So one of them is just the form itself, fa'ala. And so how you would use this little document is any of our roots, like the first one, alif with a hamza and a mim and a ra. Then you simply take your three vowels, the three fathas, right, these vowels right here, and you transplant them on any of those verbs in the list. So in the case of the first one, it would become amara, amara. And likewise, if we wanted to go to this one, sheen, ra, and ta, we transplant our vowels of sha, ra, ta, and we get sharata. So that's one way to do that one. And as you can guess, the other two are going to work virtually the same. The only difference is we have fa'ila, and then we have fa'ula. And so if we take the pattern of fatha, kasra, fatha, and transplant that on, for instance, our verb here of seen, ayn, and dal, we get sa'ida and shariba. Sa'ida, to be happy, and shariba, right, to drink. And then likewise, the other sigha, the other voicing of fatha, dhamma, fatha, of fa'ula, would become sharufa and qaruba. So that's really just to give you a little bit of an aid to not having to rely upon the vowel markings in the document itself, but hopefully, inshallah, you work towards committing these to memory. So as I said, our other document has a list of all of the verbs classified by their awzan, by their morphological form, that we're currently working with. But like last week, I took out 10 verbs and 10 nouns, and we used them in different contexts and in different sentences. And we're doing the same thing this week. This is why we have what? Al-Qā'imatu thaniyatu li asharati af'alin wa asma'in. So we have our second list this week that will have 10 verbs, 10 nouns, right, from our that we're working on. And then we have our example sentences here of jumalul amthalati al-madiyya al-ula. So fine, how does this work? So let's start with our first example sentence. Now, one of the things that I had mentioned in class is that we want to start to look for patterns, because that allows us to move some of the burdensome thinking from the front of our mind, so to speak, to like the back of our mind, in the way that we have a process on our computer, right, running like a background process. And so one of the things that trips us up is we see a word and we see another word and we don't clearly understand their relation to each other. So we take, for instance, first word here, well, according to our sheet, that should be raghiba. Okay, great. رغب, which the literal meaning is he desired. But now the second word, al-muallim, I need to know how and in what way do these words relate to each other. And so there's two primary ways that they can relate to each other. Either the first word is either acting on the noun or on behalf. So I'll say that again. Either if we can identify that raghiba is a verb, fine. And then the word coming after it is a noun. How does this verb and noun, what is their relationship? There's two primary ways. Either A, it is going to be acting on or impacting the noun, meaning whatever action, in this case, desire, is going to be impacting that noun. In this case, our noun is al-muallim. So desire is impacting or meaning that the teacher's being desired, or as we said, or B, that the verb is acting on behalf of the noun, and therefore it's doing its bidding, it's the action of the noun. So in the first case, if it is impacting the noun, then that noun becomes the maf'ul bihi, right? Or what we would call the direct object. So it's receiving the action. Or, as we said, or the verb is acting on behalf of the noun, and then it becomes the fa'il, or it becomes the subject. And so let's run out both scenarios, because this will help us understand how we can work towards reading the text correctly. Now, again, these are some of the kind of more clumsy, cumbersome steps that we have to do initially because we're not familiar. As we become familiar, this will become second thought to you. So we said that the meaning of raghiba, the literal meaning is he desired. But if it is acting on al-muallim, then al-muallim is going to be the maf'ul bihi, is going to receive the action of desire, and so its i'rab is going to be a fatha. And a quick note, we said what? I'rab and sigha. These are a couple of new words we encountered. What's the difference between i'rab and sigha? I'rab is concerned with the vowel on the very last letter of a word. So in this case, the last letter of al-muallim is the mim. So when we ask about the i'rab of muallim, we mean, does the mim in muallim, does it take a fatha, a dhamma, a kasra, a sukun? We want to know what's its vowel. That's what we mean by i'rab. Whereas sigha is going to be concerned with all of the vowels in the word. And that's why we have our document, the first one, of the different voicings of fa'ala, fa'ila, and fa'ula. So in this case, raghiba, that's the sigha. And so we want to know all of the vowels in the word. So that's the difference between those two. So if raghiba is acting upon the muallim, the teacher, then it means the teacher has been desired by whoever's doing this act. In this case, because if we look at the rest of our sentence, raghiba al-muallima fi tawfiq al-tulabi fil imtihani, he, we don't know who he is, he desired the teacher in success for the students in the test. As already you can see, this doesn't make, it sounds like Yoda, right? It doesn't make sense for the word muallim to actually be our maf'ul bihi, to be our direct object. What makes a lot more sense is for our word muallim to be our fa'il, our subject, and then raghiba is merely acting on its behalf. And so raghiba al-muallimu, that's going to be the i'rab, because the dhamma here being the sign of the subject, whereas the kasra would be the sign of the direct object. So raghiba al-muallimu fi tawfiq al-tulabi fil imtihani. So fi is what we call a harf jar, just like down here. I'll go ahead and mark these up as we looked at them. These are our huruf that cause things to be majroor, meaning what? They're in a state of possession. The most common i'rab, the most common impact on the final letter will be a kasra, or in the case of an infinitive noun, it will be what? Tanween, or the kasratan. So in this case though, we have what? We have a special kind of word here. So fi, we're going to have a kasra, as we've already said. Let me mark this for you so you can see a little bit more. I'll put this one in blue, right? But this word and this word are both noun. Now in Arabic, there's two main potential ways that this can be in a sentence when you have noun and noun that are right next to each other. The first situation is like what we have here, is something that we call an idafa. Idafa means an addition. Verb that it comes from means what? To add to or to conjoin. So we have two nouns. One appears to be an infinitive noun and the other appears to be a definitive noun. So in an idafa, you can conjoin or join together two or more nouns because we have the first term is called the mudaf with a dhamma, mudaf, and then mudaf ilayh. There's only one mudaf in every idafa, but there can be many other mudaf ilayh, right? There can be only one initiating noun in a noun-noun phrase, but there can be many other nouns conjoined to it. But a common is to have a two-part idafa. The first, or the mudaf, can take any potential i'rab, meaning that the last letter in the mudaf can either be the subject of a sentence, dhamma, can be impacted by a particle of possession, harf jar, kasra, or it can be recipient of the action, maf'ul bihi, the direct object, or a fatha. That goes for the mudaf. However, all of the other terms in the idafa, all the other mudaf ilayh, are always majroor, and therefore they will always take a kasra. And so, being that we have a harf jar beforehand that precedes our word tawfiq or success, then the word tawfiq does take a kasra. And then it conjoins with at-tullab. At-tullab. So there's a shadda on the ta because it's a sun letter, and there's a shadda on the lam because this is part of the sigha, this is part of the form for this particular conjugation of the noun. At-tullab is the plural of talib. Talib is a student, at-tullab is students. So what we're left with is, in our sentence, رغب المعلم في توفيق الطلاب في الامتحان. في, again, is harf jar, and therefore the last letter is going to take a kasra. So the teacher wanted or desired that the students would do well or be successful, right, in the test. Now, a very similar pattern in our next sentence, number 2. We have fi'l and fa'il. We have action and we have actor. Sa'ala means to ask a question. Literally, he asked. At-tifl is a child. So sa'ala tiflu is going to be the child asked. How again am I going to know? Because if, in this case, if sa'ala is impacting at-tifl, then it would be sa'ala at-tifla with the meaning he asked the child about the location of the new book. That is a possible explanation of the meaning that grammatically that could be correct. Sa'ala at-tifla an mawqi' al-kitab al-jadid. He, majhul, we don't know who he is, he asked the child about the location of the new book. While that is a potentially grammatically correct statement, it also, to be quite honest, is a bit odd, because what would help is to know, well, who is he that's asking the question? So if it were that, again, we'd say what? It would be tifla. But if what we have is fi'l and fa'il, not fi'l and maf'ul bihi, right? If we have the action and the actor of that act, then we have sa'ala at-tiflu, at-tiflu. So it's the child that asked, and in particular a male child, because sa'ala at-tiflu an harf jar. What did they ask about? The mawqi', or the location. Location of what? Al-kitab. Just like our sentence above, we have what appears to be an indefinite noun because there's no alif and lam on mawqi', and then the following noun begins with an alif and a lam. And so this looks like an idafa, just like above. But wait a minute, what about this word here, al-jadid? Isn't that part of the idafa? Yes and no. Let's actually begin in the reverse order. No, it is not part of the idafa, because only the last mudaf ilayh can take alif and lam. Only the last part of the of the term in an idafa can take its sign of definitiveness. So you can't have a three-part idafa where you have two of the words in that idafa after the first that both have alif and lam. You cannot do this. But what you do have is no doubt that this word here, kitab, is ism, and al-jadid is an ism. Now you say, wait a minute, it's not, it's an adjective. Well, in Arabic, we have this. So I like to say we have three major food groups in Arabic. All words are classified basically into three master categories. We have the ism, or a noun, we have the fi'l, or the verb, and we have the harf, or the particle. So basically, all words in Arabic must fit into one of these three major categories. And so words like adjectives or adverbs, like sifat and dhuruf, they're really just a kind of ism. That's their classification they belong to. But their function in the sentence, they function as an adjective. So this word al-jadid is functioning as the adjective of al-kitab, of the word the book. And so because of that, it must agree with it in gender, it must agree with it in terms of definitiveness or indefiniteness, plurality, singularity, and so on. So al-kitab is mudhakkar, and therefore is what is masculine. So al-jadid is masculine. And so it's going to agree with it. So it's acting upon it as an adjective. So our idafa is only the phrase mawqi'ul kitab. But in the entire sentence, it becomes what an mawqi'ul kitab al-jadid. So the child asked about the location of the new book. Okay, let's do this third one because it introduces another step of complexity of how to understand the relationship between words. Am I dealing with a verb and acting on behalf of a noun, or I have a verb and I'm somehow it's impacting the noun? So here we have sin, kaf, and noon, and then there's a ta on the end of it, and then they have the word al-a'ila. So we can say with confidence that this word is a fi'l. It's a verb. And al-a'ila, we know, is ism. It's a noun. Now we just need to understand, is sin, kaf, and noon, which is our, right, is that impacting al-a'ila, or is it acting on behalf of al-a'ila? Now, in the Arabic language, when you want to express the different voicings, like first person I, second person you, third person he, she, there are going to be additives that we will add on to a word. Particularly for the past tense, they're going to be added to the end of the word. So our base word is sakana, which means to live. Literally, it means he lived. So sakana means he lived. If I want to say I lived, I would say what? Sakantu. Sakantu. I lived. If you wanted to say you lived, sakan ta, masculine, and as you can guess, sakanti, you, feminine. And then if I want to say that she lived, sakanat. So we have all three vowels on the root letters, and then the added word gets a sukun. The ta gets a sukun. She lived, sakanat. So let's ask the question, what if this is me, first person, sakantu? Then the meaning would be what? Sakantu al-a'ila ta. It means I'm directly impacting the word the family. I lived the family. Obviously, this sounds bizarre and is not correct. And there really isn't going to be any difference whether that is you, masculine or feminine, with the word family being the direct object. What? Sakanta al-a'ila, sakanti al-a'ila. You live the family. You, feminine, live the family. Again, neither of these make any sense. So what we're left with is a possibility. And there's a couple clues here. So if it is her, we said it would be what? Sakanat with the sukun. And then we have the word al-a'ila. So now we've moved from impacting the noun to acting on behalf of it. So one, our last letter, the i'rab, is going to be our dhamma, right? Al-a'ila 2. But how do we know that it's sakanat and not sakana? How do we know it's feminine? Because of this letter. This letter is known as ta marbuta. Ta'un marbuta. Ta'un marbuta is what? The ta that is attached. And so it looks like a ha, but it has two dots above it. And it is the alama of the mu'annath. it is the sign of a thing being feminine. And so there are many words that have ta'un marbuta, like Surah al-Fatiha, or Surah, like a chapter in the Quran. Surah is Surah Tun, it has a ta'un marbuta, or like the word picture, Surah with a Sod, also feminine. And the word al-Fatiha at the end of al-Fatiha, it's actually al-Fatiha too. So it becomes grammatically feminine. And this is where it's important to understand. Because the thing is grammatically feminine in no way implies that it is somehow feminine in terms of haqiqah, like in terms of reality. Like Allah Ta'ala says, وَالشَّمْسِ وَضُحَاهَا, the swearing an oath by the sun and its light. And it uses the feminine pronoun of ha. Doesn't mean the sun is feminine, right? Or that the moon is masculine. It just means that Arabic is a binary language, and therefore nouns and the verbs that they act on behalf of, or the nouns that they impact, they're either going to be masculine or feminine. So if we have the sign of femininity of ta'un marbuta, then our verb has to be, if it's acting on behalf of al-aila, it's got to be feminine. So it's going to be sakanat. There's one final little twist to this one. So we are going to change, however, our final voweling here from a sukun to actually a kasra. Now we just said, wait a minute, the kasra represents second person feminine. It does, but the reason why it's not second and instead third person feminine is because of this alif that doesn't have a hamza. This is an empty alif, and so we have to make a rule, and if you remember your tajweed rules, right, it is called the wasla, meaning to connect. So we have to connect the sound of this ta with a sukun over into our word al-aila, into that lam in the alif and lam of al-aila. And so we do this by subbing out the sukun and changing it to a kasra. So it becomes sakanatil ailatu. Sakanatil ailatu. That the family lived. Where did they live? Fi, in, harf jar. Now, just like our expression above, a couple things to learn here. Bayt is what? It is an ism. Saghir is also an ism, but its function is not as ism, as we'll see, but will be as sifa, as an adjective. Now, we said what noun typically means idafa, right? Doesn't noun mean idafa? Well, it can, and it's true. The word saghir, meaning small, here, it does not have the alif and lam on it. But an idafa can both be definite and indefinite. You can have indefinite idafa. We'll cover this later. It's a little bit more advanced. The most common expressions of noun conjunctions of the idafa is with the mudaf and the mudaf ilay having the alif and lam or being definite in some way. So in this case, we have just two nouns. The first one is indefinite, and so it's going to take tanween, and because of the harf jar, it's going to be tanween of kasra. So fi baytin. As we said, this is not an idafa, but rather this is functioning as sifa. So it's going to be saghiran. So it's describing the bayt. It's a small house. Then we have bi, which is another harf jar, another particle of possession that makes the word that it governs majroor, taking the kasra. This word, janib, is actually dharf, in this case, makan. So we also have dhuruf of zaman. So you can have adverbs of place or time. And last week I gave a handout that listed some of the most commonly used dhuruf or adverbs of what makan and zaman, of place and time. So in this case, bijanib means to be close or next to. Janib means like your side. So next to or close to or in proximity to an-nahar, which means because of the alif lam, the river. So the family lived in a small house next to or by the river. سكنت العائلة في بيت صغير بجانب النهر. This is the meaning of that. So hopefully you'll be able to use these this little example here to kind of work your way through the other examples that I have here, paying attention of how do I determine the association of words to one another? Particularly, can I identify, is this word an ism, fi'l, or harf? And so if I determine that the word is a fi'l, is the word next to it probably not going to be another fi'l, because two verbs next to each other, it's like saying walked, ran, or ate, shouted. it doesn't really make any sense. So typically, if you have a verb, it's going to be next to, usually it's going to be next to a noun. I just need to determine, is that noun being impacted by the verb, or is the verb acting on behalf of the noun? So you can use those to go through our examples, and then I'll make a separate video going over the two longer paragraphs, because then we not only have to do those that we all mentioned, all these things we mentioned, but then we must be able to follow the trajectory of the action and of the actor all the way through a paragraph that can sometimes move from being explicit to being implied, back to being explicit, and again to implied. And this takes a little bit of work. Again, practice will help to move this more to a background process thought in your mind, inshallah. And it just, as they say, practice makes perfect. وَنَسْأَلُ اللَّهَ أَنْ يُزِدْنَا فِي عِلْمٍ. Inshallah, we ask Allah Ta'ala to increase us in knowledge.